in the review of the Week 17 game, we thought we'd take a look at Trey Lance. But you know what? Everyone's looking at Trey Lance throwing the ball. We thought, let's take a look at Trey Lance running the ball. Couple of interesting things in the game against the Houston Texans. And it also gets me basically to worm my way into talking about Tom Compton, even though David doesn't want to. Not that this is going to be a video about Tom Compton, but maybe I tricked David into making this video about Tom Compton. But just tell him it was Trey Lance. You know, everybody wins.
There's a notable Tom Compton moment, but it's not a good one. So
let's talk about that moment. But first, let's get to the first of 6 plays, most of which are going to be really in the first half because there was a marked change in the 49ers approach running the football in the second half. But let's start with the first quarter, 12-10. It's a 2nd and 8 play. This is a play that the Ravens made famous. It's called bash, counter bash, sometimes just abbreviated to bash. And really what this is it is a quarterback counter where the main runner here is the quarterback. And the constraint play is the run outside by Deebo here. And it's a play that Lamar Jackson runs weekly to great effect.
Yeah, so you get the bash basically is shorthand for back away, right? So back, in this case, being Deebo Samuel, going away from the counter blocking. So you see Trent Williams and Laken Tomlinson there, both kind of getting out, pulling around, and they would be leading the way for Trey Lance should he opt to keep this ball and kind of go through with his portion of the run, right? So everybody else blocking counter off to the offense's right-hand side, Deebo going away from it. And so here, I think when you look at, obviously Deebo in this game did not have near the success overall that he's had previously as a runner when lined up in these situations. And there's some different reasons why, but I think when you look at some of them, and this play in particular, it really is, I think, a kind of a questionable read from Lance. So he's going to be looking at number 54 there, the defensive end to the side Deebo ends up going to. And when you see him kind of freeze there, like he takes a little step inside, which is going to be pretty natural for those guys once they see, the tackle there pull the opposite way. They're going to kind of look to close that space a little bit. But he largely just kind of settles there, right? He isn't crashing hard down inside like he's going to be following and looking to really chase down that counter run from the backside. He just kind of settles there. And so he's in a great position to be able to see this handoff to Deebo and obviously get there and kind of affect the play. And then you've also got the safety of that side, right? You've got number 20 there that's coming down. They don't have enough blockers because this is kind of the backside of the play to pick up everyone. So you've got a couple free defenders there. You've got your pursuit once they kind of break away from the counter portion of this. It's going to be getting in on it. So he just doesn't really have much of a chance here, right? He's getting pressured immediately almost after the handoff. He's got pursuit rallying quickly in behind it there. And so there's just not much opportunity for him to get anything going on this one.
Yeah, you can see it a little bit better here at the end zone angle. You can see 54 kind of jump inside, and if you're going to be a bit forgiving to Lance, you can see like that jump right there is what makes him think, okay, I've got him inside. I'm going to go ahead and give it to Deebo. But if he ends up making a keep read here, which I think he probably still should make, man, the entire side of that line collapses. Look at everyone from Kittle to Williams to everyone. Look at this. Laken Tomlinson and Kittle. You see that both their numbers clearly because they've turned that line sideways. You've got Williams over here tracking down another poor soul that he's likely going to demolish if the play goes that way. And basically you've got green grass.
Yep.
You've got 23 maybe. And you've got Lance with just a whole lot of space if he keeps this ball. This is one of those things where it's like just a near miss. It's a near miss where if he makes this keep read, it could be a big gainer.
Right. And obviously you don't want to, penalize Lance for what could have been end result, right? He doesn't know what's going to happen there, but I think it's worth calling out. We're going to call it out in another play, right? Where you see kind of what could have been developing there and really an opportunity for a big play. And you don't get that chance because of what starts here, right? With that questionable read and not getting the ball to the right place to begin with.
But then we get to a next play, and this is going to be effectively the exact same play. We're later in the first quarter, 5:45. It's a 2nd and 7. This is also a counter play, but this time the roles are changed. Now it's the quarterback who's running the constraint play. He is running away, and this is a counter play that is blocked up for Deebo. And instead, Lance keeps it and basically it's the same read, right? The guy is not moving. The guy stays home. So or the guy actually, it's confusing because he doesn't do much different actually than he does in the last play. He keeps it again. Yeah. He probably should give it. And as a result, he ends up not getting a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah, I think when you look at it here, right, you freeze it kind of right after the snap again. And it's that same sort of thing, right? So anytime you get a defensive end in this position, he sees the guy that he's covering, which in this case is going to be the offensive tackle. When that guy pulls away, he's going to step inside to kind of help close some of that space that's created, right? So the offense is removing a gap, so he needs to kind of step down inside. That's always going to happen. That in and of itself isn't enough to give you the read that guy's crashing down, right? And that in this case, it would be the pull read, right? So that he keeps it and runs off like he does. But the difference here is, so this is actually the other defensive end from the previous play, right? The previous play was 54, who's down here on the bottom this time. After that moment, right after Lance pulls it is when the difference happens. So rather than that defensive end getting a good clean read on where the ball went, he gets kind of fooled. He loses track of it, and then he steps further inside there, and that's what actually opens the space, right? So if you didn't see that same sort of movement from the defensive end, we'd probably get a very similar result here, which is, Lance getting essentially pressured in the backfield immediately after he starts running the ball and likely not getting a whole lot out of it without being able to make some sort of fantastic play, breaking tackles or doing something else. And so, you see the same sort of setup here from the offense, different formation, different way to get to it. But you're really just, like you said, flipping those the roles from Deebo and Trey Lance there, but you get the same read, same mistake, but you just get a worse play from the defender that leads to a more positive outcome on this one.
One other player here is Justin Reed, and this is something the safeties were doing all game for the Texans. They were really firing downhill. As soon as they saw run action, they were filling that alley. And this is something that I think is interesting just because of all of the hype that Lance gets as a runner. Here in the open field, you think to yourself, okay, he's big, he's fast, he's strong, and yet he doesn't look like much of either of those things against Justin Reed. And Justin Reed at this point is going to be a faster player. He's in the secondary, I know, but it doesn't look like Lance has much of a plan here in the open field other than just kind of like bracing for impact. And Reed, I think Reed had in run defense had a really, really good game. He had 5 tackles, 3 stops, and you see him all over just firing straight at the ball carrier from the middle of the field. And he has a couple of plays like this in this game.
Yeah, I mean, so this is to me like the most concerning thing that we've seen in our time getting to see Lance on the field this season. And it's just like not really showing much of anything in terms of explosion or just the ability to create things with his legs once he gets out into space, right? And here, I think as we watch this a couple times from the end zone view, I don't think he even saw Reed until the last moment. You look at where his head's at, and he's kind of focused on these outside blocks. He never really even glances inside to see where these pursuing defenders are, and it's not until right here you see it turn inside, and at this point, Reed's already loaded up for the tackle, right? Like he's got that momentum coming downhill, and he just kind of lays it on him. I mean, this is a 2nd and 7 play, and when you go back here and look at it kind of when he first breaks into space, this is really a play. I mean, those outside blocks both get made. He should get a first down on this. Like, he shouldn't be getting just stoned short of the first down marker by a safety like this. And so I think, this is the kind of concerning thing with him overall, that you just expected a more dynamic runner, and we haven't seen that yet.
And so then you get to the next play. It's going to be later in the first quarter. 58 seconds. This is a 1st and 10. Now we get to what the Niners look like generally when they're running the ball, especially with Deebo. This is going to be an outside zone with that kind of reverse pivot handoff that we've gotten used to seeing that does widen Deebo's route and really has him pressing the edge and getting to the edge and using his speed. It's successful. And it's successful in the way that we're used to seeing the 49ers be successful, and it's in large part because of the blocks that you get basically everywhere. I mean, this is a really, really well-blocked run.
Yeah, I think this is the one play, right, that kind of looked like we've seen it before. And so this is, the first half, the kind of strategy was more like this, and we've seen it on all three plays, but it's really get more shotgun from Lance, right? He's getting it in the gun with all of these options. You're getting Deebo aligned next to him, whether it's starting there or usually what they were doing is motioning him back into the backfield like they're doing here. And then you get, kind of this suite of plays where they've got some read stuff built in, and then you can also kind of mix in the stuff that they've already been doing, with these lead outside zone runs to Deebo. So you get it here. And this is kind of the one time that Deebo got the ball and everything kind of worked out and it was set up in a way that allowed him to kind of do his thing. So you see kind of all the blocks get made here. And so he can actually get beyond the line of scrimmage and get a little bit of steam going and have a chance to, start breaking some tackles, start doing what we've seen him do with the ball. And so, I think, you get it everywhere. Trent Williams, fun as usual, as him and Kittle kind of handle that double team over there and create a ton of space. You see Mack getting up on 37 there with nice movement. Doesn't get, a ton of contact, but he forces him to undercut, which just effectively takes 37 mostly out of this play. So, I think just kind of across the board here, you're getting good, solid blocks. And unfortunately, Deebo didn't see a lot of this on his carries.
And this is going to be where we have the Tom Compton Trojan horse moment. Look at the backside of this run. Look at Tom Compton over here. He's already set up really well to get this block.
Yeah, my guy's got the easiest block to make on this play.
It's the easiest backside block ever. But you know what? He's got it. Look at those hips flip around. Look at that. He's agile. He's lithe like a cat. Just ready to flip those hips around.
That's
protect
exactly
the backside.
what I think of. Quick like a cat. That's Tom Compton.
That's great. So we show you that play because later on in the drive, now we're in the second quarter, 13:07, 1st and 10. This is basically the same run, and it does not succeed. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, yeah, because there's a guy running right at Deebo in the backfield, and it's because Dan Brunskill it basically gets wrecked and blows everything up. And this just kind of goes to show that runs, when they're blocked really well, can be effective, but it just takes one guy to screw it up. And now all of a sudden you change Deebo's path, you change blocking angles, and everything falls apart.
Yeah, it really is just that one. So much of the rest of the play is setting up just like the previous one, right? I think all of the other play side blocks that you get with Compton this time and Kittle, goes well. This is a much better block that I would call out from Compton than the previous one. Him and Kittle working on that double team do a great job. But once Brunskill gets hit here, right, or gets missed here, like Deebo can no longer, like his path should be much more tight to the line of scrimmage, right? So he's coming flat initially, but he should be able to start turning it uphill, right, pretty much right away, so that he can follow kind of the wall that is being built there with Compton and Kittle and who is it, Jennings that's coming in there. So like he should be able to kind of hug those blocks pretty tight. And so the fact that he can't do that changes a lot of other things, right? So you see Wilson's block, it looks like he ends up being bad here, but this is really just because the angle is off, right? If Kittle is able to stay tight to those inside blocks, well, then the corner that he's blocking can't go super wide like this and go around him and still come back and get in on the tackle, right? So that's really not his fault. That's a product of something that he can't see that's going on behind him. And that's it, right? The only other one that's kind of making a run here to the ball is 37 coming from the backside. But again, if Kittle doesn't have to bounce this out so wide and can take the proper angle, like he's probably not getting there in time. Or if he is, he's getting there much later, and Deebo moving forward, moving downhill is going to have a little bit more of a head of steam, and he's going to have a really great chance to, with a hole that big, to break that tackle and get out into the secondary. So again, one block is kind of the tough thing with the run game sometimes, is one block can just kind of undo the whole thing.
So then we get to the third quarter. By the third quarter, the strategy for the 49ers really shifts. Whereas the first quarter, you had a lot of shotgun. You had a lot of really, kind of quarterback, we saw the counters. We saw some of the really read stuff there. At this point, everything goes to under center run game, which we're not going to show you much of because we know what that looks like with Elijah Mitchell. And if you're going to run with Lance, it's going to be quarterback power. And that's going to be the next two plays that we're going to show you, because this is a concept that he ran often and very, very well in college. This is in the third quarter. This is a 3rd and 4. And they do not pick it up on 3rd down. They eventually do not pick it up on 4th down. But basically, in the 4th quarter, they went back to the Lance staple of quarterback power. And that's really the only time that they ran him in the second half. And it was pretty clear because, he was in the shotgun. Other than that, it was under center run game.
Yeah, and I mean, even the Deebo stuff, right? So again, we're not going to look too much at that because we've seen it before quite a bit. But yeah, like when even the few Deebo carries that we got in the second half there were under center runs, right? And so, he didn't, again, have a lot of room on those. But when they did go shotgun, they looked to get Lance involved. This was usually what they were going to. And again, just couldn't get the blocking. I think it probably was like a little jarring for the O-line, I imagine, like going back to so much more of this stuff, because they really had kind of settled in back to going heavy zone, right? Like it was not a lot of guys pulling as much and doing some of the gap scheme stuff that we saw a lot more frequently in this game. And so, yeah, I mean, here is kind of I feel like a great example of one where I don't love the way that they try to block this up, and then it leads to kind of you end up with 3 guys just kind of running into each other and not blocking anyone, and that's kind of the downfall of why this isn't successful. So as we let it run one more time here, it's really that block on number 50 there that kind of screws everything up. And so the way that they're setting this up, and you can see by Trent Williams going down initially with his path towards 93, but then he's going to realize with kind of the game that they're playing there that it's 51 that he's going to get. That means Kittle is also going to be going down and looking to, in this case, block 58. And so what you're expecting from this alignment is you get Kittle going down to 58. You've got Juice that's going to come and be your kick out block, which he's going to try to get to 50. And then you've got Brunskill pulling from the backside, who's going to, right now by alignment, there's really no one there that stands out. So he's just going to kind of be looking to pick up whoever comes in and looks to fill that hole. But 50 is kind of aligned much further inside than I think you would like, right? So I think there's a way you could block this up, and everybody kind of blocks down. And that means Kittle could block this number 50, right? And so you end up with 50 getting his hands on Kittle, prevents him from getting up to the linebacker there, throws him into the guard, who then bumps into Juice, and they all just kind of fall down and can't really get anything going there. So it's just one guy that, again, really kind of wrecks this play, screws up multiple assignments. And I think it's just one where they got a front that they probably, weren't totally expecting on this play. And they weren't as clean in their ability to block it up as they would probably be on something like a zone run that they're more used to.
Yeah, and this isn't Kittle getting like destroyed by someone he's trying to block number 50 right now. He's trying to move past 50 to get up. And it's because he doesn't expect 50 to engage quite that way that he gets thrown down. And ultimately that just kind of screws everything else up. And they still get a few yards on the play. They still get a few yards, but they're not able to convert ultimately on 4th down. And then you get to another play where it's quarterback power. This one is successful in that it looks like Lance makes it in the end zone, but it was called back for holding because Ayuk right at the point of attack. It's pretty clear. You'll see it from the end zone angle. But similar type of play, this is the type of run that Shanahan went to in the second half when it came to Lance. You didn't see any of the bash stuff. You didn't see any of the zone read stuff. You really saw quarterback power, which in this case is blocked up really well, except for Ayuk. And that was it. Other than that, it was really under center, outside zone stuff. And that was a pretty big shift in the second half. And so overall, it was really kind of a mixed bag for Trey Lance in the run game.
Yeah, and this one was, I mean, such a great call and setup too, because, I mean, when they go and motion Wilson out of there and go empty, you end up with so much space inside where this run is going to hit, right? And so they end up going with the motion with Kittle, and so he becomes kind of the lead blocker, basically the Juice role from the previous play, and he gets up in there, and they have the numbers, they have the angles on this. The only one that really isn't able to get it there is Ayuk in the slot, and it's just tough. Like, it's not necessarily that severe of a hold. I mean, it's very clear, like it's a clear call, but especially when you do that right at the point of attack, right? This is the exact hole that Lance is hitting. And when you hold somebody right there, it's not often going to get missed or let go. So, yeah, just a tough one. One of the more, otherwise, at least from an offensive line perspective, more well executed plays on this gap stuff that they try to do more of here, but gets undone by the penalty.
And that's really the beauty of what Lance offers. And this is some of the excitement, right? None of the runs were really too terribly successful in this game for a couple of different reasons, but it's second in goal. You're looking at really the kind of red area, and it's that spreading the field that you've got to respect him as a quarterback. You've got to respect throwing the ball. At this point, you've seen, kind of run game under center, and then bang, you get hit with that kind of a play. That's the kind of things I think that allows Lance to be more of a threatening quarterback in these types of situations. But overall, I think, one of the questions I had leaving this game was, how was it that this defense, who wasn't a really good defense, was able to feel like they bottled up San Francisco at times? And in large part, it was because of a couple of, missed blocks. I think it was some of the line getting back to some of that gap scheme stuff, which they have not had to do all that much. Which Shanahan largely abandoned in the second half and just went to one run that he liked with Lance, and that was quarterback power that he tried a couple of times.
Right. I think that's the good thing, is that when you look ahead now to the Rams game, and we know that that's their game plan, right, against the Rams, is they're going to go run heavy. They want to punch them in the mouth. And I wouldn't look at any of the struggles they had in this game and be necessarily terribly worried that that's going to carry over, because I think they're self-inflicted, right? I don't think there's something that the Rams are going to see from this tape and it's like, yeah, we need to do that, right? It's kind of more miscues, things that they need to clean up, especially, if they're going to, we're going to get another game of Lance and we're going to get more of this gap scheme stuff, hopefully another week of practice against this kind of stuff. The Rams, I feel like, have taken a little bit more of a consistent approach in terms of the fronts that they like to play against the 49ers to try to limit what they can do on kind of the outside run game stuff. So hopefully it's something they're a little bit more prepared for, a little bit more, readjusted to if they go back to this kind of thing. But yeah, I think a lot of self-inflicted stuff, whether it's Lance just being a little iffy on some of the reads on the zone plays, or just, again, having that one guy that can't quite get the assignment, for the blocking on the some of the other unsuccessful plays that lead to kind of everything getting blown up.
Yeah, and I think this, to me, too, goes back to just the idea of the team being comfortable with something because they've practiced it and played it for just about the entire season. I don't think this is indicative of what the line can do or what they can do with the run game with Lance in it. I just think this is another one of those things where if they had 15 weeks of this, then they'd probably be much better at executing it against these fronts because they would have seen it, they would have experience. It wouldn't be kind of more of a 1 week thing. So just another reason why maybe, once the team starts to do this consistently, you'll see a little bit, I think, different results because of the quality of player that the 49ers have along the offensive line.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. I think it's more of just a practice thing, right? This is not what they have spent a ton of time doing. And so much of why they're so successful with the zone running game, right, is because they have seen it. They've blocked that play up a million times against all these different looks. Like, there's not a ton you can really throw at them to kind of get them off balance or make them unsure of, like, okay, are we going to do this block? Like, how are we going to handle this front? You don't really get as much of that there. And I think it looked like there was some of that in this game where they just were a little unsure, maybe didn't go with the best solution to block up some of the fronts. And so, yeah, I think absolutely something that they would hopefully get cleaned up long term.
Yeah, and despite all that, Lance still put together a performance where he ended up winning the game. And yeah, it was the Texans, but there's still room to grow. There's still room for him to do things better. And once he does, hopefully he starts taking some additional steps, because I don't know, torn ligaments and broken thumbs. We'll see.
Doesn't sound good.
We'll see. No, doesn't sound great. But that does it for this week's Patreon video. We'll be back, I guess, next week, and we'll either be recapping the last game of the Niners season or the last game of the regular season. Who knows? Tune in next week. We will be, we'll be properly lubricated, I'm sure. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the beers. Thanks for being patrons. And as always, go Niners.